Hi, I'm Ellen McCauley at Pray It Off in Syracuse, New York. It is March 20th. We are here tonight to talk about one of the leading causes of obesity. It's kind of like what came first, the chicken or the egg. Are you depressed and gain weight, or do you gain weight and then you're depressed? I think a lot has to be said about both of those correlations, because your mood and your weight are so closely related. One of the things this article talks about is the first thing anyone should do when they're obese and depressed is get a support system. It recommends Weight Watchers, Overeaters Anonymous, both very good groups. I was part of both of those. But the only thing that really helped me was Pray It Off, because it uses the tenets of Weight Watchers, which is eat less and exercise, keeping the log, except at Weight Watchers, they don't make you. Here, I make you. And also the Overeaters Anonymous, the higher power, but we name the higher power Jesus. And it also keeps us from that isolation and despair. When we come here each Thursday or next Friday, we're not alone. We're not the only ones struggling with these day after day issues of the calories and of the weight. And it helps with depression, because sometimes even making the changes we need is depressing. What? I gotta eat less and move more? That's depressing. What? I gotta do this the rest of my life? That can be depressing. But what we're suggesting here are gradual changes. You know, I'm sure Kevin will attest that these changes he's made over 36 weeks have been gradual. 500 calories a day. He didn't, eat 3 yogurts a day and try to lose 10 pounds in a week. They're gradual changes. Dieting can worsen your mood. And then there's antidepressants, which many times make you gain weight. And we're going to talk about all those things in a little bit detail. But the treatment of depression and obesity should be integrated. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about is before I started Pray It Off, I was so depressed. So depressed. And medication didn't work. I would gain more weight. And the only thing that really helped with both the depression and the work was Pray It Off. Coming week after week, being part of a group, turning some of these things, stress, anxiety, all those things over to Jesus. I live in Syracuse. We don't see sun from October 1st till April. There's such a thing as the seasonal affective disorder too. You're in the office, you're in home. How many times you go on vacation and feel great when you get back? It's because you're laying on a beach somewhere soaking in the vitamin D. So we need to talk about a little bit more about how we can work with our weight and our depression. And there's different kinds of depression that we're going to talk about. But the first thing I'm going to talk about is a Christian approach to defeating depression. And I like to bring up a story about Elvis Presley. What most people don't know is that he was won most of his Grammy Awards for his gospel music. He was a very torn individual, but very faith-filled. And he wrote something one night. He wrote, "I feel so alone sometimes. The night is quiet for me. I'd love to be able to sleep. I'm glad that everyone's gone now. I'll probably not rest. I have no need for all of this. Help me, Lord." Here's a guy that was arguably one of the most famous people in the world. And he felt so alone. And you can be in a room full of people and feel alone. And one of the things that I learn every day, and just the other night I was with my sister, and I didn't want to leave her. I didn't want her to be alone. And this thought filled my heart. It was like Jesus saying to me, I'm with her always. She's not alone. You can go. I'm right here. I feel her pain. I feel everything she's going through. And not only that, I'm with you, Ellen. I'm with you. I feel your compassion. I feel your love. And that's one thing that's helped me with my own depression, is the love of Christ that fills me and takes me out of that valley of despair. And you know, there's real things to be depressed about. I call it situational depression versus chemical depression, if you will. A death of a loved one is one of the most depressing things you can go through. A huge disappointment in life. You get fired from your job even though you did a wonderful job because new owners came in and said, we don't need you anymore. Relational problems. You just can't get along with your husband or wife or kids. It's so stressful. And then there's other cases where there's biological issues. Maybe a chemical imbalance. And you know what's interesting is my dad had 6 brothers and a sister. And we call it the McCauley curse. And for those of you who don't know, I kept my maiden name, McCauley. So when I tell these stories, Bob became a McCauley when we got married because that's how much he loved me and knew it was important to me as I was my father's only son. But the McCauley curse that we would say, they drank, they smoked, I think it was anxiety and depression. Now, the second generation, which is us, we were diffused a little bit because we had our mothers who kind of cut that McCauley blood in half, you know, and then our kids aren't as crazy as us. And I have such a propensity for that anxiety and that sucking down. Now, you wouldn't know it to look at me. I don't seem like a glass half empty kind of person. I'm like, hey, here we go. So the internal struggle is what's so difficult with that McCauley curse. And I can find myself falling down into this huge pit of despair that I suffer alone, I thought, until I realized that Jesus was there. I like to bring up the psalmist David, who so many people think, you know, had everything going great for him. And he brings up in Psalm 102 that God seemed far away, life seemed meaningless, his bones burned, maybe he had an ache or a fever, he had a loss of appetite, he felt alone, persecuted, rejected, sad in tears, aware of his failures, he felt tossed aside. Everything in the Bible is for us to relate to and say, oh my gosh, that's how I feel. You know, there are a few people who, when they're depressed, lose weight, but they're not in this group. And I don't know many of them myself. The thing is, when I am depressed, it's that medicine. It's that give me a beer, give me a chip, give me something to make me feel less depressed. Give me a Snicker and I'll forget that, you know, this happened or that happened. And we all know it does not work. If we develop a pattern where we always see the worst, if we always see the glass as half empty, we are prone towards that depression. But if we develop a pattern where we think that God is in charge, I trust him, Jesus, I trust in you, that he loves us, he is with us always. And then this is where I talked about it earlier. We think that life is permanent. And so often we don't realize that this is temporary. That we are here as visitors to learn lessons, to come closer to God and spend eternity with him. And if we live our lives thinking that it's permanent, that everyone we lose will throw us into a pit of depression and sadness and a mire and a muck that we will never be able to get out of. But if we live knowing that we are here for a purpose and that we will see those that we love again, we will see them, then we can go on with our lives even after devastating loss. The only thing that is permanent is God. God is permanent. Daybreak comes and darkness flees. Can you feel the darkness lifting? The psalmist keeps things in mind by reminding himself that this too shall pass. Get some rest. Ponder God's character and love. Read the Word. Listen to some uplifting music. You know, I play music every week. And some people are like, why are you playing a song every week? I want us to get into a habit. One person said, I love the music you play. I burned her a CD. She's wearing the grooves out of it, if there's even grooves on CDs, but you know what I mean. It's the music, and we need to have our Christian friends. I consider all of you my Christian friends, and living each day to the fullest. I'm going to stop right there, Bob.